Book 1. The master said, studying and from time to time going over what you've learned, that's enjoyable, isn't it? To have a friend come from a long way off, that's a pleasure, isn't it? Others don't understand him, but he doesn't resent it. That's the true gentleman, isn't it? Master Yu said, a man filial to his parents, a good brother, yet apt to go against his superiors. Few are like that. The man who doesn't like to go against his superiors but likes to plot rebellion, no such kind exists. The gentleman operates at the root. When the root is firm, then the way may proceed. Filial and brotherly conduct, these are the root of humaneness, are they not? The master said, clever words and a pleasing countenance. Lit tall humaneness there. Master Zeng said, each day I examine myself on 3 matters. In making plans for others, am I being loyal to them? In my dealings with friends, am I being trustworthy? Am I passing on to others what I have not carefully thought about myself? The master said, guiding a state of 1,000 chariots, be attentive to affairs and trustworthy, frugal in expenditures and sparing of others. Employ the common people only at proper times. The master said, young people should be filial at home, brotherly with others, circumspect and trustworthy. Let them act kindly toward the populace in general and befriend those of humane character. If, after that, they have energy left over, let them study the arts. Zixia said, if he treats worthy persons as worthy and is respectful to them, does all in his power to serve his father and mother, gives his best in the service of the ruler, and in dealings with friends is faithful to his word, though some may say he lacks learning, I would surely call him learned. The master said, if the gentleman lacks gravity, he won't command respect. If he studies, he will avoid narrow-mindedness. Put prime value on loyalty and trustworthiness. Have no friends who are not your equal. And, if you make mistakes, don't be afraid to correct them. Master Zeng said, tend carefully to death rites and pay reverence to those long departed, and the people will in the end be rich in virtue. Zakin questioned Zigong, saying, when the master goes to a particular state, he is certain to learn about its government. Does he seek such information, or do others just give it to him? Zigong said, the master goes about it by being cordial, forthright, respectful, modest, and deferential. The master's way of seeking is different from that of others. The master said, while his father is alive, observe his intentions. After his father is dead, observe his actions. If after 3 years he hasn't changed his father's way of doing things, then you can call him filial. Master Yu said, what ritual values most is harmony. The way of the former kings was truly admirable in this respect, but if in matters great and small one proceeds in this manner, the results may not always be satisfactory. You may understand the ideal of harmony and work for it, but if you do not employ ritual to regulate the proceedings, things will not go well. Master Yu said, trustworthiness is close to rightness. It ensures that people will live up to their word. Courtesy is close to ritual decorum. It ensures that people will give wide berth to shame and disgrace. When one makes no mistakes in what he favors, he can serve as a leader. The master said, a gentleman when he eats doesn't try to stuff himself. When he chooses a dwelling is not overly concerned about comfort. He is attentive to affairs, careful of his words, and looks to those who have the way to correct himself. He's the kind who can be called a lover of learning. Zigong said, poor but free of obsequiousness, rich but free of arrogance. How would that do? The master said, all right, but not as good as poor but happy in the way, rich but a lover of rights. Zigong said, when the ode says, as something cut, something filed, something ground, something polished. 7. Is that what it's talking about? The master said. See, Zigong, now I can begin to talk to you about the odes. Someone tells you the first step, and you understand the step that comes after. The master said, don't worry about whether other people understand you, worry about whether you understand other people. Book 2. The master said, conduct government in accordance with virtue, and it will be like the North Star standing in its place, with all the other stars paying court to it. The master said, the 300 poems of the Book of Odes may be summed up in a single phrase, think nothing base. The master said, guide them with government orders, regulate them with penalties, and the people will seek to evade the law and be without shame. Guide them with virtue, regulate them with ritual, and they will have a sense of shame and become upright. The master said, at 15 I set my mind on learning. By 30 I had found my footing. At 40 I was free of perplexities. By 50 I understood the will of heaven. By 60 I learned to give ear to others. By 70 I could follow my heart's desires without overstepping the line. Meng asked about filial devotion. The master replied, never break the rules. When Fan Qi was driving the carriage, the master reported this to him, saying, Meng Sun, Meng Yizi, asked me about filial devotion. I told him, never break the rules. Fan Qi said, what did you mean by that? The master said, while they are alive, serve them according to ritual. When they die, bury them according to ritual, and sacrifice to them in accord with ritual. Meng Wubo asked about filial devotion. The master said, your father and mother should have to worry only about your falling ill. Or, according to another interpretation of the last clause, in the case of one's father and mother, one just worries about their falling ill. Zhu asked about filial devotion. The master said, nowadays, it's taken to mean just seeing that one's parents get enough to eat. But we do that much for dogs or horses as well. If there is no reverence, how is it any different? Zixia asked about filial devotion. The master said, the difficult part is the facial expression. As for young people taking on the heavy work when there's something to be done, or older people going first when there's wine and food, can this be called filial devotion? The master said, I talk a whole day with Hui, and he never disagrees with me as though he were stupid. But later, when I examine his private conduct, I see that it fully exemplifies my ideas. No, Hui is not stupid. The master said, watch what he does, observe the path he follows, examine where he comes to rest. Can any person then remain a mystery? Can any person remain a mystery? The master said, be thoroughly versed in the old and understand the new, then you can be a teacher. The master said, the gentleman is not a utensil. Zigong asked about the gentleman. The master said, first he puts his words into action. Only later does he follow up with explanations. The master said, the gentleman is fair-minded and not partisan. The petty man is partisan and not fair-minded. The master said, learning without thought is pointless. Thought without learning is dangerous. The master said, to delve into strange doctrines can bring only harm. The master said, you, Zilu, shall I teach you what it means to know something? When you know, to know you know. When you don't know, to know you don't know. That's what knowing is. Zizhang was studying to gain an official position. The master said, hear much, put aside what's doubtful, and in your speech apply the rest with caution. Then you'll make few mistakes. Observe much, put aside what's suspicious, and in your actions apply the rest with caution. Then you'll have little to regret. Making few mistakes, having little to regret, the way to official position lies in this. Duke I asked, saying, how can I make the common people submissive? Confucius replied, promote the straight and let them oversee the crooked, then the common people will be submissive. Promote the crooked and let them oversee the straight, then the common people will not be submissive. Jikangzi asked, how can I make the common people respectful, loyal, and diligent in their work? The master said, if you are strict in overseeing them, they will be respectful. If you are filial and compassionate, they will be loyal. If you promote persons of goodness and teach those who are incompetent, then the people will be diligent. Someone questioned Confucius, saying, why aren't you in government? The master said, the book of documents says, filial, only be filial, a friend to elder and younger brothers. This contributes to government. To do this is in fact to take part in government. Why must I be in government? The master said, persons who lack trustworthiness, I don't know how they get by. Big carts that have no yoke bar, little carts that have no collar bar. How can you go anywhere in them? Zizhang questioned the master, saying, can we know how things will be 10 generations from now? The master said, Yin followed the rights of Xia, and we know in what ways it added to or subtracted from them. Zhou follows the rights of Yin, and we know in what ways it added to or subtracted from them. Whoever carries on from Zhou, we can know how things will be even 100 generations from now. The master said, to sacrifice to those who are not one's ancestors is flattery. To see what is right and not do it is cowardly. Book 3. Confucius observed of the Ji family, they have 8 rows of dancers in their courtyard. If this can be excused, what cannot be excused? The 3 Ji families used the Yang ode when the sacrifices were being carried away. The master said, assisting are the great lords, the son of heaven in majesty. How can this be used in the halls of the 3 Ji families? The master said, a human being who lacks humaneness, what is ritual to someone like that? A human being who lacks humaneness, what is music to someone like that? Lin Fang asked, what is basic in ritual? The master said, a big question indeed. In rites in general, rather than extravagance, better frugality. In funeral rites, rather than thoroughness, better real grief. The master said, the Yi and Dai tribes with their rulers cannot match the Xia people without a ruler. The head of the Ji family was planning to make a sacrifice to Mount Tai. The master said to Ran Yu, can't you save him from this? Ran Yu replied, no, I can't. The master said, are we to suppose that Mount Tai knows less about ritual than Lin Fang? The master said, the gentleman never strives with others. To be sure, there are the archery matches, but even they have their bows and deferences as the contestants go up and come down, and the wine drinking at the end. Such is the striving of the gentleman. Zixia asked, saying, her artful smile engaging, lovely eyes in clear outline, colors on a white ground. What do these lines mean? The master said, the painting comes after the white background. Zixia said, so ritual comes afterward? The master said, Shang is the one who reads my meaning. At last I have someone to discuss the odes with. The master said, as for the Jie rites, I could describe them, but the state of Qi can't provide the proofs I need. As for the Yin rites, I could describe them, but the state of Song can't provide the proofs I need. This is due to the lack of records and persons of authority. If these were sufficient, I could prove my words. The master said, as for all that comes after the libation to the spirits and the ancestral sacrifice, I have no wish to see it. Someone asked about the meaning of the ancestral sacrifice. The master said, I don't know. Someone who knew its meaning would understand all the affairs of the world as if they were displayed right here, and he pointed to his palm. Sacrifice as if they were present means to sacrifice as if the gods were present. But the master said, if I can't take part in the sacrifices, it's as though I haven't sacrificed at all. Wang Sunjia said, better pay compliments to the kitchen stove than to the southwest corner. What does this mean? The master said, not true. If you incur blame with heaven, you have nowhere to turn for forgiveness. The master said, Zhou surveyed the 2 dynasties that went before. Its ways are refined and elegant. I follow Zhou. When the master entered the Grand Temple Sen, he asked questions about everything. Someone said, who claims that this son of a man of Zhu 11 understands ritual? When he enters the Grand Temple, he asks about everything. When the master heard this, he said, asking is part of the ritual. The master said, in archery, hitting the target is not the point. People are not all of equal strength. That was the old-time way. Zigong wanted to do away with the sacrificial sheep at the first of the month announcement to the ancestors. The master said, see, Zigong, you care about the sheep. I care about the ritual. The master said, in serving the ruler, if you carry out all the acts prescribed by ritual, people think you are toadying. Duke Ding asked how the ruler should treat his ministers and how the ministers should serve the ruler. Confucius replied, the ruler should treat his ministers in AC accordance with ritual. The ministers should serve the ruler with loyalty. The master said, the Guanju owed joy, but not excessive, sadness, but not to the point of injury. Duke Ai asked Zai Wo about the altar to the god of the soil. Zai Wo replied, the Xia rulers planted it with pines, the men of Yin planted it with cedars, and the men of Zhou planted it with chestnuts, in order, they say, to make the common people tremble. When the master heard of this, he said, completed affairs one does not comment on, things done one does not carp over, what is past one does not criticize. The master said Guanzhong was a man of small parts. Someone objected, saying Guanzhong was noted for frugality, was he not? The master said Guanzhong had his 3 returnings mansion and he did not require his staff to perform double duties. How can that be called frugal? But, said the other person, Guanzhong understood ritual, did he not? The master said, rulers of states put up gate screens, and Mr. Guan put up a gate screen too. Rulers of states, when entertaining another ruler, have a stand for inverted wine cups, and Mr. Guan had a stand for inverted wine cups too. If Mr. Guan understood ritual, who doesn't understand ritual? The master, speaking with the grand music master of Lu, said, music can be understood in this way. The players first in unison, then freely harmonizing, playing separately or carrying on from one another, and thus the piece is completed. The border guard of Yi requested an interview with Confucius, saying, when gentlemen pass this way, I never fail to have an interview with them. The master's followers arranged a meeting. When the border guard emerged from the interview, he said, you young men should not worry about your present bad luck. For a long time now, the world has been without the way. Heaven is going to use your master as a wooden clappered bell. Of the Shao music, the master said, perfect in beauty, perfect in goodness. Of the Wu music, he said, perfect in beauty, but not perfect in goodness. The master said, standing above others but without tolerance, carrying out rites but without reverence, conducting funeral proceedings but without grief, how can I bear to view such as these? Book 4. The master said, humaneness is the beauty of the community. If you can choose but do not make humaneness your home, how can you be called wise? The master said, a person lacking in humaneness cannot endure straitened circumstances for long, nor can he enjoy favorable circumstances for long. The humane person rests in humaneness, the wise person profits from humaneness. The master said, only the humane person is able to like others and is able to hate others. The master said, truly set your mind on humaneness, and you will be without evil. The master said, wealth and eminence are what people desire, but if one can't get them by means that accord with the way, one will not accept them. Poverty and low position are what people hate, but if one can't avoid them by means that accord with the way, one will not reject them. If the gentleman rejects humaneness, how can he be worthy of the name of gentleman? The gentleman never departs from humaneness even for the space of a meal. In confusion and distress, he holds fast to it. Stumbling, faltering, he holds fast to it. The master said, I have never seen a person who really loved humaneness, or a person who really hated the lack of humaneness. A person who really loved humaneness would have no one who surpassed him. A person who really hated the lack of humaneness would conduct himself humanely, never allowing those who lack humaneness to affect his behavior. Is there someone who for a whole day is willing to use all his strength to achieve humaneness? I've never seen anyone who lacked the strength to do so. There may be such a person, but I've never seen one. The master said, people's errors vary with the category they belong to. Look at the errors and you know the degree of humaneness. The master said, hear the way in the morning, and it won't matter if you die that evening. The master said, a man of station whose will is set on the way but who is ashamed of poor clothing and poor food not worth talking to. The master said, with regard to worldly affairs, the gentleman has no strong likes and no strong dislikes. He sides with what is right. The master said, the gentleman has his mind fixed on virtue. The petty man has his mind fixed on land. The gentleman has his mind mixed on penalties. The petty man has his mind fixed on bounty. The master said, act only with profit in mind, and you face much rancor. The master said, can you govern the state with ritual and a deferential approach? Then you will have no difficulty. If you cannot govern the state with ritual and a deferential approach, then what use is ritual alone? The master said, don't worry that you have no position. Worry about how you can qualify for one. Don't worry that people don't know you. Look for some reason to become known. The master said, Shen, Master Zeng, my way has one theme running throughout. Master Zeng said, yes. After the master left, the disciples asked, what did he mean? Master Zeng said, the master's way consists of loyalty and reciprocity alone. The master said, the gentleman is alert to what is right. The petty man is alert to what is profitable. The master said, when you see a worthy person, think about how you can equal him. When you see an unworthy person, reflect on your own conduct. The master said, in serving your father and mother, you may gently admonish them. But if you see they have no intention of listening to you, then be respectful as before and do not disobey them. You might feel distressed, but should never feel resentful. The master said, while his father and mother are alive, a son should not go on distant journeys. If he travels, he must have a fixed destination. The master said, if after 3 years a son has not changed his father's way of doing things, then you can call him filial. The master said, you must not be ignorant of the age of your father and mother. For one thing, it is a cause for rejoicing. For another, a cause for fear. The master said, people in old times were sparing in their words. They were ashamed to think that their actions might not measure up. The master said, those who go wrong by holding back are few. The master said, the gentleman desires to be hesitant in speech but prompt in action. The master said, virtue is not alone. It invariably has neighbors. You said, be too censorious in serving the ruler, and you will end up in disgrace. Be that way with your friends, and you will lose them. Book 5. The master said of Gong Yicheng, he deserves a wife. Although he was bound and imprisoned, he was guilty of no crime, and he gave him his own daughter for a wife. The master said of Nan Rong, if the state is ruled by the way, he will not be overlooked. If the state is not ruled by the way, he will still stay clear of penalties and punishments. And he gave him the daughter of his elder brother for a wife. The master said of Zijian, a real gentleman, this one. If there were no gentleman in Lu, how could he have become like this? Zigong asked, what would you say of me? The master said, you are a vessel. What kind of vessel? Zigong asked. A fine sacrificial vessel, said the master. Someone said of Yang, he is humane, but lacking in eloquence. The master said, why does he need to be eloquent? People who overwhelm others with their glibness often end up hated by others. I don't know if Yang is humane, but why does he need to be eloquent? The master urged Qidiao Kai to take an official position, but he replied, I am not yet confident I'm up to it. The master was pleased. The master said, the way does not go forward. I'll get on a raft and set out to sea, and the one who will go with me will be you, Zilu, will it not? When Zilu heard this, he was delighted. The master said, you outdoes me in love of bravery, though he doesn't always think where that may lead him. Meng Wubo questioned Confucius, saying, is Zilu a humane person? The master said, I don't know. Meng Wubo asked again. The master said, in a state of 1,000 war chariots, you, Zilu, could be put in charge of military levies, but I don't know if he is humane. What about Chu, Ran Yu? The master said, for a town of 1,000 households or a clan of 100 chariots, Chu could act as overseer, but I don't know if he is humane. What about Qi, Gongxi Zihua? The master said, Qi, dressed in formal robes, standing in court, would do very well to discourse with the visitors and guests, but I don't know if he is humane. The master questioned Zigong, saying, between you and Hui, which is the better man? Zigong replied, how could I dare hope to equal Hui? Hui hears one part and understands 10. I hear one part and understand 2. The master said, no, you are not his equal. You and I are neither of us his equal. Zai Yu, Zai Wo, was given to sleeping in the daytime. The master said, rotten wood can't be carved. A wall of stinking earth can't be troweled. What's the use of trying to reprimand you? The master said, at first, when it came to people, I listened to their words and trusted their conduct. Now, when it comes to people, I listen to their words and observe their conduct. It was you who brought about this change. The master said, I have never seen a person of true firmness. Someone said, what about Shen Cheng? The master said, Cheng is all desires. How can he be called a man of firmness? Zigong said, what I don't want others to do to me, I want to avoid doing to others. The master said, see, Zigong, you haven't gotten to that stage yet. Zigong said, the master's views on cultural and emblematic matters, these we have heard, but his views on human nature and the way of heaven, These we have never been able to hear. When Zilu had heard something and had not yet been able to put it into practice, his only fear was that he might hear something else. Zigong asked, why was Kong Wenzi given the posthumous name Cultured when? The master said, clear-sighted and a lover of learning, he was not ashamed to ask questions of his inferiors. Therefore, he was given the name Cultured. The master said of Zichan, he exemplified the way of the gentleman in 4 respects. In conducting himself, he was prudent. In serving his superiors, he was respectful. In looking out for the common people, he was caring. And in employing the common people, he followed what was right. The master said, Yan Pingzhong was skilled in his dealings with others. Even toward those he had known for a long time, he remained respectful. The master said Zhang Wenzhong housed a large tortoiseshell for divination in a hall whose pillars were capped with hill-shaped designs and whose joists had a duckweed pattern. What can one think of the wisdom of such a person? Zizhang asked, saying, Ziwen, the prime minister of Chu, served 3 times as prime minister but showed no sign of delight, and 3 times was dismissed from the post but showed no sign of resentment. As former prime minister, he invariably reported to the new prime minister on affairs of state. What do you think of this? The master said he acted with loyalty. Was he humane? I don't know how he can be called humane. Kuizi assassinated the ruler of Qi, Chen Wenzi, who for his carriages owned 10 4-horse teams, abandoned them and left the state. When he arrived in another state, he said, the people here are no better than our high official Kuizi. And he left that state. Arriving in another state, he said, more like our high official Kuizi. And he left that state too. What would you say of him? The master said, a man of integrity. Was he humane? I don't know how he can be called humane. Ji Wenzi thought 3 times before he acted. When the master heard of this, he said, twice is enough. The master said, in the case of Ning Wuzi, when the Wei prevailed in the state, he was wise. When the Wei did not prevail in the state, he was stupid. His wisdom can be equaled, but not his stupidity. When the master was in Chen, he said, let's go home. Let's go home. The young people of our district are in high spirits but hasty. The cloth has been handsomely woven, but no one knows how to cut it. The master said Bo Yi and Shu Qi did not dwell on old wrongs, so they had few feelings of rancor. The master said, who claims that Wei Shengao was honest? When someone came to borrow vinegar from him, he borrowed some from a neighbor and then gave it to the person. The master said, clever words, a pleasing countenance, politeness overdone. Zhuo Quming would be ashamed of such, and I would be ashamed too. To hide your distaste for someone and become that person's friend, Zhuo Quming would be ashamed of that, and I would be ashamed too. Once, when Yan Wen and Zilu were accompanying him, the master said, why don't each of you speak of your desires? Zilu said, I wish that I and my friends could share the same carriages and horses, robes and furs, and never worry if we wore them out. Yan Wen said, I would like never to boast of what good points I have and never cause trouble to others. Zilu said, I would like to hear the master's desires. The master said, to free old people from worry, to be trustworthy toward my friends and at all times solicitous of the young. The master said, it's hopeless. I have yet to see anyone who can recognize his faults, look inside himself and put the blame there. The master said, in a village of 10 households, there are certain to be those who are as loyal and trustworthy as I am, but none my equal in love of learning.